Hey there, CGSA. My name is Leland Gordon, and I'm a CGSA alum, your former vice president emeritus from, I think, 2018 or 19. And Dr. Kiko sent me an email a couple weeks ago. Of course, I'm getting to it at the last minute. To give some insight on getting academic jobs. And so today I've got sort of a three-step presentation that I'd like to share with y'all about how I got to where I am. And of course, the first thing I should probably do is explain to y'all where I am. You may have seen my face around the halls of Mendocino. I'm part-time faculty here at Sac State. Stingers up. And I finished my master's I was just like y'all. I finished in December of 2019. So I made sure to come out with the master's right before the pandemic. Perfect timing. But I was fortunate enough to be added as a part-time faculty member right after graduating. And that was a really cool experience for me to immediately do the GA and TA stuff, but get paid a lot more. And so today I've got, actually before that, I should say, also, I'm also part-time faculty, which they call adjunct at American River College here in Sacramento. It's a community college as part of the Los Rios Community College District. So what I do is I split my time between Sac State and ARC. And so today I'm going to give you some insight into what it's like doing this job. And it's a very unique situation for sure. So I've got three main points that we would definitely want to go over. And the first one today will be what you need to have gathered to even apply for these types of academic teaching jobs, the things you need to get. Then the second thing is let's compare and contrast the CSU and community colleges, two completely different working models, and there's differences between the two. And somebody who's worked at both for many years, I'd like to share some of those differences with you. And then the third thing is the lifestyle. If you wanted to be a part-time / adjunct faculty instructor as your career, so to speak, like I do, I've got some really good insight into the lifestyle of that because it's incredibly unique and quite frankly, you gotta be flexible. Let's just say it that way. But for the first thing here, let's get to the absolute nuts and bolts. If you want any job, really, you gotta have some certain things such as a resume, which we might call a CV, curricula vitae. I believe my Latin's not ideal. Letters of recommendation, not a bad idea to have them. So my advice to y'all is ask for those as soon as possible. If you have faculty who already think pretty well of you, you might even want to ask for a letter before you graduate. Give those faculty members time to get those, because I know when I get requests, I'm telling students, yeah, I'll get it done in 3 months or so, and that's legit, okay? So if letters of recommendation are something that you would want to include, which why wouldn't you? Get those early, stash them away. Always a good idea to have that. You'll also need transcripts. Now, of course, one of the bummers is that it takes a while for your actual master's degree to show up on your official transcript. I believe when I applied at Sac State, I had to do a little bit of communicating with a couple different departments. So obviously your transcripts will be a part of that. You may have to pay for those, especially, for example, my undergrad transcripts from Chico State. Go Wildcats. I had to pay for those and wait a couple weeks for those. So your degree, your transcripts, your letters of recommendation, your CV. Also, most places are going to ask you for an equity or diversity statement. There's a ton of resources out there for you to figure out exactly how to go about that. And it's we're currently in a situation where now, obviously, with the federal government, these emphases on equity and diversity are not as prominent, perhaps, in institutions that are getting federal funding. So there could be some, variation, but I know the community colleges serving underserved communities and equity are incredibly valuable there, especially. So it's very likely that you're going to need to research and learn how to craft a proper statement of diversity. A philosophy of teaching is another thing that I had to write, I believe, for Sac State. So those are things that you're going to craft on your own, and it's always a good idea to go out there and research and see recommendations from academics, especially people who are department chairs, for example, to see what they're looking for in those. Don't let ChatGPT write it for you, because if you sit down for an interview, you're probably going to have to elaborate on some of the things that you wrote. So you want to make sure that it's your own words and that you're familiar with it. Okay, be as human as possible. They're hiring a person, not an essay. So I think as long as you have those things gathered, you're now ready to maybe apply. And how it works at these places is they have a pool. All these people send in their stuff and apply, and then this university or college goes through and says, this person meets the criteria, yes, yes, no, no, yes, no. And it's not about whether they like you or not necessarily. It's strictly, do you meet the criteria? Do you check all the boxes that they need? Then they probably get through a round of, do we like them, do we not? And what they do is they add you to a pool. You don't have any work. You don't have a job. What they basically said is like, yeah, you could work here. And that's great. I'm in a couple pools where they've never called me to offer me work. At Sierra College, I'm in the pool, but I don't hear from them. When they add you to a pool, that just means that you're on their list, and they're going to go through their criteria when they have open classes, and eventually they might make it to you and call you. So some places you have to reapply to be in the pool every year. At Sac State, I actually technically have to apply to be in the pool every year. Luckily, you can just roll it over at Sac State. Whereas at American River, I don't have to. So it depends. So recapping there, I think you all have a good idea of the stuff you want to do before you even get out there and start applying. Of course, your applications are going to be done online. But let's go to the second aspect, and that is the ins and outs of working at a CSU like Sac State versus the community college. And the first thing we got to get into is you got to understand student populations, okay? Student populations in community colleges have different needs than students at Sac State. At Sac State, as most of you are probably aware, a very, very large percentage of our undergraduate students are of those typical college ages between 18 and 24, let's call it. English proficiency abounds for the most part. We do have some international students at Sac State, of course, but the community college, you're getting a much more broad array of students. And so your equity and diversity statements are probably going to need to reflect that. The fact is I have senior citizens, I have high school students and everything in between. I have all, of course, ethnicity, race, all of that. That's, at both places, it's pretty much a broad spectrum. But I will say that at American River and probably all of the Los Rios campuses for that matter, we have a very large Afghan population. We also have a lot of Ukrainian immigrants, okay? So your student population is different. We also have reentry students at community colleges, older students who are going back to school later in their life perhaps, okay? So understand that you have different student populations at those places. The budgets at each place. Sac State will have a ton of work one year, and then the next year their budget is like hammered by 15%. It's a lot of fluctuation at Sac State with how many classes they can offer, they do offer. The community colleges are a little more solid. Their money does come from the state, but it also comes from some local property taxes. So I've found that over my years, they're much more stable in terms of the budget, which just makes it a little bit easier to work there. Oh my gosh, offer timing. ARC is asking me for my availability for classes sometimes like a year and a half ahead of time. And I have 3 young kids. So I'm like, I don't know. No clue. Sac State is more in the moment. So ARC, I know what I'm teaching there almost a year ahead of time. And that is, it's good or bad depending on who you are. Sac State, I've had offers 5 days before classes started. So at the CSU level, you're more likely as a part-timer to get class offers incredibly late compared to a community college, okay? The types of classes you will teach. Community colleges do not offer upper division classes. Okay, it's part of what they do, the associate's degree. So you're doing basically the general ed, the communication experience, introduction to public speaking, intercultural, interpersonal, small group, maybe a little bit of persuasion, perhaps, okay? At Sac State, you do have the opportunity to teach upper division classes. In general, as a part-timer, you're probably not going to get a ton of those, but it can happen, okay? But I teach the same Comms 4 class at Sac State that I teach at American River College, and that's Comm C1000, Introduction to Public Speaking. So I literally teach the same class at Sac State and at ARC, okay? Not as many classes are offered at the community colleges. The community colleges offer a lot more non-traditional formats for scheduling and learning. And what I mean by that is they have a lot more online classes. They'll have Saturday classes. They also do 8-week classes. They do summer classes. They do intersession. Sac State is more just your standard spring or fall. You can get a little more variety with the community colleges in terms of what they offer, and that gives you more flexibility, of course. For example, if you wanted to teach night classes, they offer night classes much more at the community college level than they do at the CSU level. So you've heard a few of the academic, perhaps, differences between the two. You are not expected to do research at either if you are a part-time or adjunct faculty. I have a master's degree. I do not have a PhD. So I teach classes, and that is it, okay? Whereas Dr. Kiko, Dr. Stitt, Dr. Shauna, all of these, OG PhDs, they're doing research at Sac State. That's not what you would be doing as a part-time or adjunct instructor. Lastly, our third idea here is just the lifestyle. If you wanted to make enough money out of being a part-timer to hopefully eat and live pretty decently, there's a few aspects that I have learned and I think would be very important. I'm doing, for example, between the two campuses, I'm doing 19 and a half units this semester, which is a little chaotic. Luckily, 3 of those units are an asynchronous class. It really helps. So you can make enough money doing this for this to be your job. However, you need to be okay with unpredictability. You need to be okay with just constant change. And here's what I mean by that. First things first. Community colleges are limited in how much work you can do for them. You can only teach 3 classes per semester. No more than that within a community college district, okay? So you can't get enough classes just at ARC or Sac City or Folsom Lake to be a full-time worker. 60% of full-time is basically what it comes down to. Sac State does not have a limit necessarily. However, there's a lot more people in the pool at Sac State, okay? So community college has those limits, which means you can't just be a part-timer at one campus and have a full-time income, would be a way of saying that. They pay you by the class at both places. At Sac State in the CSU, we have something called entitlement. And basically, the more you work, the more they have to offer you the next semester. So it builds upon itself at Sac State. At ARC, because I have that limit, I hit that cap every semester. I get 3 classes every semester. I'm very fortunate in that regard. It took me a while to get there. There were some semesters where I only got 1 class, okay? And I would have to scramble a little bit. Both places, the lifestyle. As part-time faculty, folks, you're running your own classes and you're not going to have oversight as much as you might think you would. And that freedom is wonderful, okay? I am very rarely, I've been reviewed at American River, I believe, twice in about 6 years. And I think I've been reviewed at Sac State 3 times, okay? So you don't get reviewed very often. Your bosses do not contact you to make sure you are doing certain things. You have a ton of freedom, okay? So that for the first year or so, you might suffer from imposter syndrome. I felt like, gosh, am I doing a good enough job? And it took me a while to realize, like, yeah, I'm doing the things I need to do. As long as you're hitting on those expected learning outcomes, you're good. And each college lists those very prominently for you. You've got a lack of certainty, folks. Even with your entitlement at Sac State, you might not be guaranteed to get that many units, okay? I believe I'm entitled to 19 units for the entire academic year, okay? So that's not enough. 30 would be probably a full-time job. So I'm not entitled to enough at Sac State. And the fact is, between the budget, student enrollment, the types of classes offered, semester to semester, you do not know what's going to happen, okay? And so your income can fluctuate, and you need to understand that's very important. If you're living on the margins already, that can be a big deal. I'm fortunate that my wife is able to, her income pays a lot of the bills around here. So that lack of certainty, you don't know which classes you're going to teach. You don't know which days of the week and times. You submit your preferences for days and times. In the end, you might not get any of those, especially if you're newer. People are ahead of you on the ranking list, okay? It goes by experience. Benefits are available, health and dental. Sac State, you have to teach a minimum of, I believe, 6 units in a semester to be eligible for those benefits. I'm not quite sure on the requirements of the community colleges, but medical, dental, life insurance, those types of things, retirement accounts, those are available to you as a part-timer. But sometimes you might not get enough classes assigned, and then you go without health insurance for one semester. That is a possibility that you need to understand there. I don't work during the summer. I got kids. That's my job during the summer. But when you are off during the summer, you are entitled to unemployment compensation from the state. It's not a lot of money, folks. The most you can make is $450 a week before taxes. It's not a ton of money. However, during the summer, I do not teach classes and I collect unemployment. Now, that also means I can't work anywhere else. Okay, so you have to make that choice about during the summers. Do you go out and work another job, have a gig type thing, and then how much more than unemployment would that pay, and is that worth it for you? I also get unemployment during the winter break. That's very nice during the holidays, right? So you can get money coming in year round, but it's going to fluctuate a lot. You don't get the same paycheck all the time. Now, Sac State pays the same every month. You get 6 checks for the amount of work you do, and they are all equal. The community college, it's all about the hours worked each month. So spring break, for example, the month where spring break, I take a 25% pay cut that month in a way, okay? So your budgeting is definitely more complex if you are doing this part-time adjunct type lifestyle. Lastly, you have opportunities at the community college to do paid community service. Campus service would be the better way of saying that. So there are other opportunities to connect with the student body and make money at the community college at ARC. I would assume that's offered across the Los Rios district as well. That's Sac City, American River, Cosumnes River, and Folsom Lake. If any of you were to have any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer them because I had to navigate this myself during the COVID lockdown, and I was very fortunate. I got lucky. I knew some of the right people, and it really went well for me. But for you folks going out into this world of potentially wanting this to be a career that you do for a little while or a very long while, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I guess let's just say Leland Gordon, so that's LelandGordon at csus.edu. That's probably the easiest way for you to make that first, contact. If you had any questions for me, if you see me around the hallways, chances are I'm running late, but you can always say hello. But I hope this is helpful, and my gosh, who knows where this world will take you, especially as you're getting ready to finish the master's, whether you want to go for a PhD, whether you want to go work in the private sector, work for the state. Folks, you can also just teach 1 or 2 classes and then have another job. There's quite a few people here in our department who do that, who are part-timers and have full careers, and they take on a class or 2 as extra money, as something to do. Because I love being in the classroom, and I think I would have missed that if I'd gone out back into the private sector. So it was a pleasure having a chance to do something for y'all at CGSA. Thank you, Dr. Kiko, and best wishes to all of you. Stingers up.